welcome to 5 Minutes in the Shed. So I've been doing all kinds of stuff. I thought I'd take a break from wire brushing my nuts and polishing my pipes to give you a little update on where I am with my petrol tank. So chemistry, I'll bring you up to speed. Okay, so as you may remember from when I was doing my petrol tank before, I'm too tight and stingy to buy proper rust removing chemicals, right? So I tried a big handful of screws and I threw them in, and I put in pretty much a whole bottle of white spirit. That's what it looks like now. Nice. That's to go in the bin, obviously. The white spirit and the screws slushed the rust around, but the screws all got caked up and full of gunge. Right, so I had to then wash the screws off. It was too sticky. The white spirit was too sticky, but it did a bit of abrasion work and it got some stuff out. It was all right. Then I tried gunk. So I put a load of gunk in it, swirled that around. That kept the screws clean and got a bit more rust out, but not totally ideal. So I moved on, and I thought I'd try what they do on YouTube, right? And I bought a bottle of Coca-Cola, right? Other colas are available. So bought a bottle of Coke, dumped the whole thing in the petrol tank, and I left it for a day, right? Then I came back to it and I turned it over like that, and I left it for another day, and I did that on all the different sides. It's been kind of all week really. It's been sitting there. Absolutely brilliant, right? Really, really good. It's pulled off loads of, probably like, I don't know, 75% of the rust has gone because I was using Coca-Cola. Brilliant. So I poured the Coca-Cola on the lawn because it's only Coca-Cola. Washed it out with water just to give it a good old blast out with water. It's actually pretty good, right? But there is still some stubborn traces of rust around, right? So I'm moving on to level 2 now. So I've spent me £1.20 or whatever it was on Coca-Cola. So I thought I'd spend some serious money now, right? I've spent another £1, right, on Tesco's finest distilled white vinegar. Right, now I've cleaned it all out. I cleaned all the screws, put the screws back in again, and I've put one of these bottles of vinegar in the tank. Right, and I'm leaving it there, sitting in the bottom, and then I'll turn it over, leave it a day, turn it over, leave it a day, and I'll do that again, right, to see if I can fetch some more rust off. However, I thought I'd do a bit of science while we were doing this, right? So, let me move the tank. Actually, I'll show you inside the tank. See if you can see what a difference it's made. Let me get some paper towel. Right then, so just dry that. You remember how minging it was before, right? I can actually see the writing now on the cap. It's actually quite clean, and you know, all around the edges, just a little wipe, and all the gunge started coming out. Which this is mainly from the Coca-Cola. Incredible. So yeah, just wipe them because I've been shaking it again. See, I'll just wipe that. Right, so. I'm assuming you can see that on the video. Let me have a look. Yeah, so this was all really chunky, rusty, horrible, crappy in there. It's all clean now. It's all quite nice. Some daylight in there. Right, I'll see if I can take you in for a closer look. Right, let's put the shiny torch bit on. So you can see now there are a couple of patches of rust, but most of it has come off with the Coca-Cola. So anyway, these final little patches of rust, that's what I'm working on now. So, hang on a minute, put that back up there. I'm going to angle it down a bit because I want to show you something on the bench. Right, I'm going to angle. Not too far. Right. Okay, so bit of science. Right, what I've done is I've got some rusty old washers. Oh, hang on a minute, I've got to turn this light off here. There we go. I've got some rusty old washers, and I put them in a aerosol cap, and I put white vinegar on to see, you know, how it would react and everything. And it's starting to pull the rust off straight away, which is pretty good, right? But I think I'd have to leave it for a few days, right, and you know, give it a swish and stuff. But then I thought, what we need is a violent reaction, bit of violence, right? So I've got here a soda blasting gun, right, which blasts crystallized industrial baking soda, right? And to go with that gun, I've got a bag of soda crystals. Now, you all remember the science experiment from school where you put like lemon juice and baking powder in a thing, you know, I thought, try that, right? So I put some baking soda in there with the white vinegar, and it all went like this, and actually it's starting to work really, really well. Right, let me see if I can bring you in for a closer look. Oh, excuse the lousy camera work. Let's see if I can. There we go. They were red rusty. There was no metal showing on those before, but it's. Oh, a minute. We swap hands. Can't do it with my left hand. I'll give that a little swirl round. You can see it starts to kind of react again, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to leave that for a while and see how that works. But I thought what I'll do is I'll show you what happens when you mix the two in a pot with some rusty stuff. Right, now I'm going to have to get the camera angle right for this, so bear with me. Okay, so maybe a weird camera angle, right? But you are now looking down on my workbench. This is my hand. That's a thumbs up from the wrong angle. So in the pot, I've got some crystalline baking soda, right? So there it is. And I've got some rusty nuts. Right, there we go. So I'm going to put the rusty nuts into the baking soda. And then I've got my Tesco's Finest distilled white wine vinegar, right, and I'm going to give it a bit of a squirt. Get ready for the science. There we go. Just like in your school science experiments. Right, now I think because the baking soda that's inside there is granular rather than powdered, the reaction sort of slows down, right? But if you give it a bit of agitation, the reaction kick-starts again, right? And I think it's because we're using granules rather than powder, right? There it goes again, and already muck's starting to come off these nuts and washers. Right. I'm thinking about all the wire brushing and stuff I've done over the last few weeks and thinking, you know what, I could have just had them in a pot full of, you know, fizzing science experiment. Anyway, so that's the science experiment, and the reason that I'm showing you the science experiment, so yeah, 2 science experiments now, is because now we've got a petrol tank full of white wine vinegar, right? This stuff. Right, and that's sitting there slowly working away at the rust, and I'm going to do the rotating bit and get all the bits wet and give it some time to work. But I think what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to fill my blasting gun with baking soda. I'm going to stick this straight into the petrol tank, and I'm going to blast in at high pressure baking soda crystals, right? And that's going to then explode and cause violence in my petrol tank, and my petrol tank will look good as new. Oh yeah. So yeah, that's where I am with the petrol tank. What else have I been up to? Okay, engine update. So here's the engine. Now you may let me just check it's on the telly. There we go. Move around a bit. Right. As you may remember, I put the gearbox cover on, and that was all on and it was all working. However, right, I noticed the clutch cable goes through a hole in the outer casting, and there should be a rubber grommet in there. It's only a rubber grommet, nothing big, but I decided that it needs it. So that's come off, so I can put that on the clutch cable. Then I noticed the clutch cable's a little bit manky. So I need a new clutch cable because the outer cover was a bit crappy. Not happy with that. So that's off again for now. No big deal. I'll just reseal it on again when I put it back on. So that's off. Also, the studs which go in here, because a couple of nuts go on the outer cover there. The threads are a bit chewed up on the nut end. So I've ordered 2 new studs. So new studs come in with shiny new nuts, because shiny nuts are good. So that's why that's off. This one can probably have the cover on, but I just haven't done it yet because I don't want to scratch it. Right? You may have also noticed that there's some wires on the top of the engine. So the distributor, I took that apart, cleaned it, put it back together again. I should have filmed that really. I never thought about it, but I was only cleaning. So the distributor's on there. The points are in there at the minute. I don't know whether to go electronic ignition or just put it through the points. Not sure yet. But the dizzy's on. What it needs to be doing, I need to time that now. So find top dead center, find the opening closing point of the points, and then adjust that to where it should be, and then lock it off. I'm not happy with the HT leads, they're bad. Not happy with the HT caps, they're awful. So they're going to go. Got new ones coming. Generally though, look, everything's looking like super shiny. The caps for the rocker covers, not happy with those because they're a bit grotty. I wanted some of these like super duper tuned ones with like, you know, like fins on and that, because these look wicked when they're polished. But I've only got one. Anyway, ordered a new set because they're just nice and shiny for the top of the engine. So I'm waiting for parts for that. Yeah, waiting for the clutch cable, waiting for the grommet. So can't really do much more to that. So let's have a look at the other side. This is really heavy now. Alright, so this is the other side of the engine. Primary drive side. So the clutch, luckily, I haven't taken off again. Alright, so that's all good. What I've done is I've put the studs in there which take the stator, which goes onto there. I have no idea if this works. I should test it. I will test it. And we've got the rotor in there, which is the magnetic part, as you can see, magnetic. Whoa, good magnets in that. So that's all put on. When I tighten that up, that will tighten the chain adjuster, so it gets the chain tight. So that's as far as I can get with that really. Not happy with these nuts, they're awful, so I've ordered new nuts as well. And I've put a couple of little caps on and things like that. So this is all pretty much where I can get to at the moment, while I'm waiting for parts. So I thought I'll get it ready and I'll actually put it in the bike, because that's the next big stage that everybody wants to see. Everyone wants to see the bike put the engine in, and I think that's the point we're at. So so that's on my to-do list. What else have I done? Yeah, so I've got all the engine brackets and everything ready to go. So they're going to go on the front of the engine there. Hold it in the frame, so that's all done. Nuts are wire brushed. Bolts for putting that in already. Frame's ready to go. Oh, I'll show you what else I've been doing. Hang on. You may have noticed this earlier, but I've cleaned up my exhaust, polished all that up, ready to go on, because that looks wicked. Super excited about that. This does lead me to another thing. So the engine's going in and the exhaust is going on. Now the engine, hang on a second. If you remember, the bottom engine bracket is kind of like this sort of thing. Oh, is that on the screen? No, it's not. Let me adjust. There we go, we're adjusted. Right, so this is kind of like the bottom engine bracket. It goes across the bottom of the frame, and so this is where I was just storing nuts and washers. This did have a lot of nuts and washers on it, because it's basically all thread with a couple of crappy things put on it. So that kind of went like that, and the bottom of the engine went into these two brackets. One is steel, which is cut in the oddest shape in the world ever. The other one is aluminium, which is even worse. What a terrible thing, really. So that then went across the bike like that, and then some nuts went on from the outside of the frame to hold the engine kind of in the bottom cradle. We can do better than that. Alright, so I need to work on a bracket for that. The other bracket, well, on the subjects of brackets, is for the exhaust. The exhaust looks lovely, but then it was mounted on with this monstrosity. Right? I don't know what it is. Yeah, I don't know. So there's this chromed piece of steel which is going rusty, so that goes in there somehow. And then there's this kind of block of aluminium grottiness with various nuts and bolts in it, which is, I mean, it's not just an odd shape, it's just horrific, right? We can do better than that as well. Now, I can't do these brackets until the engine's in the bike, until the exhausts are on the engine, so I'll see where they go, so I want to make sure they're all in line and everything. I've also got an idea for a heat shield which comes down the side, because these get bloody hot, right? So yeah, need to do something with that. So we're at big assembly stuff. I'm going to put some big stuff on, and then make some little brackets. That's where we are. Now that engine is bloody heavy now. I could lift it in myself. I lifted it out myself, but I didn't care about the paint at that point. Right now, I do care about the paint now because it looks lovely. So I'm going to need need another pair of hands to lift that in. I need to go and find either a child or a wife, and then we'll drop that in the frame. See how we get on. Okay, so here's the bike. Right now, I've protected the frame a little bit. We've got a towel, because the engine kind of sits on that cradle when it goes in, so I need lots of padding, right? So we've got a towel in there. I don't want to knock these frame tubes here, so I've covered them in some gaffer tape, duct tape, and the block here where the front engine mount goes on, this looks really nice, and I don't want to scratch that, so we've got some bubble wrap on there. So now all I need is to take that big lump of aluminium and cast iron and steel and get it in here. So that's what we're going to do. Right, so there we go. Engine's in the frame, looking fantastic. I forgot how tight a fit it was actually. I mean, it's really, really close around these edges, and I hadn't realised, but I took it out this way, kind of this side of the bike, but then it dawned on me the bike was facing the other way then, you know, the handlebars were this end. So now it was the wrong way around. It had to come from this side. So we figured it out eventually, and it went in quite well. I've got one teeny tiny scratch on the frame, just there, a little bit gutted, but no one will ever notice. I won't put that live out on video. So there we go, engine's in, and the battery box contains a cup of tea. So yeah, I think that'll be it for today. Now I can crack on with the brackets, and when all the other stuff arrives, I can start bolting stuff on. I can't wait to see it actually with the covers on, so it all looks proper. It's going to look really nice. So yeah, pretty much there. I mean, I could almost go for a ride on it. Fantastic.